Have you ever been somewhere where you just don't feel welcomed? For me, because of the way I look, I'm pretty much welcomed everywhere. I haven't had to face a lot of discrimination in my lifetime. But there still is this one store at the mall that I just do not feel welcome at. And of course, it's just one of those stores that caters to a certain type of people. And two of my friends love this store. So whenever we're at the mall, of course we have to go in. And as soon as we walk in, the salespeople will run up to my friends and greet them like royalty. Hi, welcome to the store. I love that bag. Nice hair. Can I get you anything? But somehow, they always forget to welcome me. So I stand there, and I stand there, and I stand there. It could be something simple. Maybe my friends just look friendlier than me. Or it could be because my friends are wearing silver jeans and carrying a guest purse and have on Sperry's. And then there's me. My entire outfit combined probably costs less than what my friends spent on a pair of jeans. And the salespeople know that. They know I'm not going to drop $75 on a Sinful brand t-shirt. So they ignore me, they avoid me, and they hope I leave so they don't have to deal with me. Now, there are certain people in our society that we treat like this. And I'm speaking, of course, of our immigrant population. I just woke some people up in church this morning, I think. That's right, we're going to be talking about immigration. Now it's time for the public service announcement part of my sermon. This is an issue that has been highly politicized. I am a political science major. I spend day in and day out with students whose bread and butter it is to make logical and reasoned arguments. In class, we talk about abortion, we talk about the death penalty, and we talk about economics. Never have I seen a class get so heated in the day we talked about immigration. I don't know what it is about this subject that makes people so passionate, but something does. I'm a very passionate person, and what I'm about to tell you is my opinion. My opinion that has been formed through my relationship with Christ, my relationship with the church, and through days of research. But in the end, that's just what it is, an opinion. If you have your own opinion that you would like to come talk to me about, or your own views and experiences, I would love to hear them. But I do ask one thing. If we disagree, let's disagree respectfully, and let's disagree in kindness. Another thing I beg of you is to not try to simplify this issue. This is a very complex problem that we've been dealing with through most of our country's existence. If you simplify it, you are not giving credit to those who have worked tirelessly on it their entire lives. Part of the reason immigration is so complicated is because people are complicated. There are between 11 and 12 million immigrants in the United States. And yes, some of them are bad people, just like some U.S. citizens are bad people. Some of you have probably had some bad experiences with immigrants. I know I've had bad experiences with specific immigrants. But we can't judge an entire group of people by what one person or one family has done to us. We need to remember what God says about the sojourner. We are called to love and help everyone, even when it's difficult. Finally, I want to clear one thing up before we start the actual sermon, because I know it's going to come up later. I do not advocate for open borders, and nor does Nebraska Appleseed, the law firm with which I have been working. There are not very many agencies you'll find in the United States that advocate for open borders. Nebraska Appleseed is not one of them, and nor am I. We advocate for a reformed immigration system that will actually work. PSA over. Now it's time to continue with the sermon. These immigrants, they might wear their clothes a little differently or eat food that is a little weird, speak in a different language that we can't understand. And there are people in the United States, and even in the church, who don't want to understand them. You probably know who these people are in your community. They'll usually start a sentence off with, "Now, I'm not racist, but." In my experience, whenever someone says that, it's usually right before they say something extremely racist. Then they'll go on to say something like this. "I'm all about culture and learning, but these people, they're just a little too different. How could we ever get along with them? How could we ever understand them? How could we ever worship with them?" So we convince ourselves, really it's better that we're separate. They can just stay over there, and then we can stay right here, and it'll be good. And in fact, wouldn't it be better if they just went back to their own countries? Wouldn't that just make things easier? So we ignore them, we avoid them, we abuse them, and we hope they leave. But ignoring something never solves a problem. And in fact, most of the time, it makes the problem much, much worse. Because when you ignore something, you give it time to grow and grow and grow until you can't ignore it anymore. This is what is happening in America right now. There is an invisible workforce of immigrants in the United States. God calls us to welcome a stranger. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. We need to follow God's commands and bring this invisible workforce to light. God doesn't want anyone to suffer. He wants everyone to feel safe and respected and cared for. We need to be His hands and welcome those who are new to the United States. This is not an issue that we can ignore. This isn't something happening somewhere far away that we can say, well, isn't that sad? That's so horrible that that's happening over there. This is something that is happening in the United States, in the Midwest, in Nebraska. Nebraska is one of the highest meat-producing states in the United States. Roughly 80% of those working in meatpacking plants are Hispanic, many of whom are immigrants. This is an issue directly affecting Nebraskans, and that will directly affect us for years to come. If we do not start discussing this issue now, it will be too late. There are many misconceptions floating around immigration, and I have to admit that until this summer, I held many of those misconceptions that I'm sure some of you hold. I never really thought immigration was something that affected me. It wasn't something I truly cared about until this summer, but the more I read about it, the more I realized it's something we should care about. I had always thought that becoming a citizen was easy. Well, maybe not easy, but definitely possible. I assumed that you went, put your name on some waiting list somewhere, and then in a year and a half, you get your visa. I thought that those who were crossing the border illegally were not respecting the process or the system. Whenever I heard a politician say something like, and if we catch them, we'll send them to the back of the line, I'd nod my head sternly in agreement and think, that's right. You need to wait your turn. You can't jump ahead. But then this summer I learned there isn't a line. Or if there is one, it doesn't lead anywhere. Getting a United States visa takes years. There are people who are getting their visas this year from Mexico who applied for them at earliest in 1993. There are people getting their visas this year in Mexico who applied for them in 1988. I was born in 1990. There are people who've been waiting for their visas longer than I have been alive. And it's pretty interesting if you want to go look this up. It's on the Visa Bulletin online, and you can see all sorts of things about visas there. Now, no matter what your political persuasion or opinion is, you have to admit that someone waiting over 21 years to get a visa, there's something wrong with that. Our immigration system is clunky and outdated. We need to modernize. I heard a story about a young man who was in the U.S. legally on student visa. While he was in the United States, his sister in his home country killed herself. He could not return to his home country to go to his sister's funeral because that would ruin his legal residency status. So he stayed in the United States so he could keep his status and missed his sister's funeral. There's just something wrong with that. Even worse than the archaic system used to get into the country is the mistreatment that happens once immigrants get here. In general, immigrants are treated with an air of suspicion and mistrust. Undocumented workers in particular are treated poorly because factory workers know that they can. But the truth is, they can't. Under international law that the United States signed, undocumented workers are entitled to the same labor rights as citizens. Now, you may not like or agree with what I just said, but this document has already been signed, so it's not really up for debate right now. That means workers, even undocumented workers, should be able to be at their jobs and be respected and safe. They should have proper safety training so that if their coworker gets caught in machinery, they can help them and not stand idly by. They should be given safety gear without having to buy it from their employer, so they don't have to worry about being blinded by chemicals or getting burns on their skin. And mostly, they should be treated like human beings. They shouldn't have to go to work every day and be screamed and cursed at, or be denied bathroom breaks until they urinate or defecate in their clothing. These are the things that should not be happening in the United States today. This is not the America I learned about in school. This is not the America that is revered as one of the greatest countries on earth, and this is not the America that I love. We can do better than this. We cannot allow these types of human rights violations to occur within our borders. People say that America is losing favor to the rest of the world, but that's not true. America is still seen as a beacon of light to the oppressed everywhere. We should be a country that welcomes the immigrants. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses. This is a phrase that is hammered into the brains of people of all ages in the United States, and we need to make it a reality. As it so often does, this responsibility falls upon the church. We Christians must step up. We must be leaders. Whether people want to admit it or not, many people still look to the church to see what's morally just. If we don't stand up for what is right, then no one will. It's clear how God feels about the foreigner. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. It doesn't get much clearer. God wants us to welcome everyone with open arms. We need to be God's welcoming mat. The mat that says, come on in, you're safe here. Do you need anything? The mat that says, you're welcome here and you are safe. It's not always going to be something that's easy. God says, whatever you do to the least of these, you do to me. God doesn't say, whatever you do to people like you, you do to me. It can be difficult. God is asking us to care for those who are the least of us. This reminds me of a great quote by J.K. Rowling, which goes, if you want to know what a man's like, take a good look at how he treats his inferiors and not his equals. And that just hits the nail on the head. It's easy to be kind to people who are like us. It's not so easy to be kind to people who are different, who maybe we don't understand. But this is something that God calls us to do. It's not always going to be easy. Some people are going to be challenging. They will challenge you to welcome them. But we can rise to that challenge because that is what God is asking us to do. God calls us to deal with the problem and not ignore it, to grab the bull by the horns and try and solve this issue. No one's expecting any one individual to solve this problem overnight, but we should all try and do our best. The United Methodist Church is a force to be reckoned with. We have changed the world before, and we can change it again. But first we must be willing to change ourselves. If we expect others to welcome the stranger, then we first must welcome the stranger. Now, I'm not completely familiar with what this congregation is doing, but I have heard that you've done a small group study on immigration, and that's great, but we can all do more. We have to make an effort to invite people different than ourselves to church with us. What's the worst that can happen? They say no? The best thing that can happen is they come with you, and they experience the power and grace that is God. And I'd say in that situation, the good far outweighs the bad. Another thing we can do is make sure that we learn all we can about immigration. The more you know about something, the easier it is to change it. Another good idea for what you can do is we can write to our congresspeople. Now, some of you in here have probably already done that. Some of you probably have congresspeople that know you by name. But there are probably some people here who have never done it. People who think that they're not good enough or smart enough to tell a senator what to do. But guess what? That senator is only a senator because of us. So it doesn't matter if you're a CEO or a farmer or a doctor or a teacher or a 21-year-old lifeguard. Those in Congress have a moral obligation to listen to what we have to say because we are their constituents and they are representing us. God doesn't expect one person to solve the problem, but God does expect us all to do what we can. God has a plan, and that plan does not involve some factory worker just treating people awfully because they want to make money. That's not what this is about. We can do this. With God, the United Methodist Church has changed the world before, and we can do it again. There's a reason that we are called to welcome the foreigner. And it's not just for that immigrant person, although it is helping them a lot. No, it's not just to help them. It's because every time we welcome a foreigner, we have an opportunity to see God's grace in them. And who could pass up an